Stewart and CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona. They host the podcast Hot Mics from Left to Right. You got to check that out. Alice, even after this, felony indictment of the former president, these poll numbers haven't changed for Ron DeSantis. Is he at risk of losing this status of being sort of the leading non-Trump contender for the Republican nomination? And who else might emerge if DeSantis just can't, move this campaign to higher up in the polls?
It's really too early to tell because DeSantis is just now getting out there in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina and connecting with the people and delivering his message. But it's the darndest thing, the fact that Donald Trump's poll numbers have not only solidified, but they've increased in large part because of this indictment. Republican voters across the country, I'm speaking with many people and elected members of Congress as well, who feel as though the Department of Justice is weaponized. The government is out to get Republicans, and they feel that Donald Trump is the victim. And he is using that to his advantage. And he is obviously campaigning on this. And I've spoken with several of the campaigns, DeSantis including, and asked how this is challenging them out on the campaign trail. And they say, look, they're trying to push their message of what they can do for the economy, what they can do to fight crime. And they say, look, people aren't frustrated with Donald Trump. They're frustrated with the Department of Justice. And I think it's just a matter of time as we get through summer and we get to the issues of it's the economy.
I guess, my question about hearing this weaponization of the Justice Department stuff that we've been hearing this past week is, why would President Biden want to see Donald Trump prosecuted, as many Republicans allege, when it seems that President Biden wants to run against Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, that's the grand question. Of course, Maria will say, President Biden is not the one that's doing the indictment.
Isn't there a little bit of a contradiction there?
It is, when he takes credit for what the Department of Justice does on other occasions.
But he has nothing to do with this. And as you know, there is a barrier between even Merrick Garland and what he is doing because of the special counsel. And so I think that is the focus of what is going on with Trump. But to go back to your question about DeSantis and not being able to move forward in the polls, it seems like the more Trump gets indicted, the higher his polls go up. The more that Ron DeSantis is out campaigning, the lower his polls and the worse he gets. And so to me, it's a question of, Ron DeSantis was right. This is a question about sanity, but it's about sanity in the Republican Party because there is none. There exists absolutely zero sanity. What's going on now in the Republican Party is nothing but a conversation about chaos and criminality. And the big contrast with what is happening today with Joe Biden and his rally is that Joe Biden is able to talk about the 13 million record amount of jobs that he's been able to create, the huge accomplishments that he's been able to put forward for the American people, for the working class, for the middle class. He's been talking about historic investments. Republicans have to talk about historic indictments.
If I can just sort of interject my dear friend Maria, speaking from the loony bin of the GOP, look, the good thing about Republicans is we have options. We have a lot of options. Obviously, right now, Donald Trump is the front runner and looking, by all accounts, to do well in the primary. But we have options. You have President Biden. And look, you have many Democrats that don't even want him to run for re-election. His approval ratings have been 40% and below for months and months. And that goes with the economy as well as national security. So you have an uphill battle. We might be crazy.
Joe Biden has dinner whenever anyone underestimates him. He has gone his whole life being incredibly underestimated. And in 2020, look what happened. In 2022, look what happened. Every single time that Joe Biden has said, I'm going to get this done in a bipartisan manner, everyone comes out. And even, people in my own party say, no, he can't do it. He's delusional. You can't work in a bipartisan manner. He's not going to be able to get this done. And he does in a historic manner. So I'm going to bet for him this time around. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Nothing is going to be easy this election cycle. But he's going to be focused on everything that he's done thus far in getting things done for the American people.
Former Vice President Mike Pence, he has weighed in on this legal trouble for his former boss and current political rival. Let's listen to this, talk about it on the other side.
I don't know why some of my competitors in the Republican primary presume the president will be found guilty. Look, all we know is what the president has been accused of in the indictment. We don't know what his defense is.
It's interesting. Mike Pence is sort of giving Trump the benefit of the doubt here for a period, but perhaps it goes to what you're saying, Alice, in that going after Trump right now is not really paying a lot of dividends. So Hutchinson, Chris Christie are kind of in the back of the pack, and maybe Mike Pence is thinking he's got to what?
It's a delicate dance, and
play it close to the vest for the moment. I guess.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, the objective is to not alienate Trump's base and make sure that they understand that you're not attacking Donald Trump, and it's more about the weaponization of the DOJ. It's interesting, you know.
But how does that issue work for you? It seems like that issue would work for Trump. How does it work for Mike?
The interesting, it was just a few days ago, the former vice president was talking to the Wall Street Journal and said the actions of the former president are something he cannot defend. And we're seeing Nikki Haley and Tim Scott also saying that these are very serious allegations. But, you know, there is an argument to be made. We'll give him this. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty, and let's hear his case in the court of law. But it's hard to argue when he acknowledges on tape himself that he's holding documents.
I do want to play another bit of sound for you, Maria. California Governor Gavin Newsom has long said he's not going to challenge Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination next year. But this week, during an interview with Fox's Sean Hannity, he refused to say whether supporters have urged him to run against the president. I mean, Newsom was definitely taking it to Hannity. That was something that a lot of folks latched onto. But he had this comment as well. I just want to play this as well.
How many times does your phone ping a day, people saying you need to get in this race because they agree with me that he's not up to the job?
Jose, I see where you're going with that.
I'm asking.
No, and I'm not answering.
He's not answering. Maria, what's going on there? What do you think Gavin Newsom is up to? Do they like this over at the White House that he goes out there and every once in a while does these sorts of
I don't
eyebrow raising?
Yeah, I don't think he's up to anything. You know, Gavin Newsom has long been a huge leader in the Democratic Party, and there's no secret that he probably has broader ambitions. But the more that he is out there taking it to the Republican Party, whoever it is, Donald Trump, every single other candidate who can't seem to get a foothold in the primary, Sean Hannity, you know, all of it, I think, is even better for Joe Biden, because that gives Joe Biden the opportunity to, you know what, Jim? He doesn't have to say a word about the criminality and the chaos that's going on in the Republican Party right now, because it is so obvious to everyone. And like I said earlier, he gets the opportunity to talk about historic investments in America, while Republicans have to talk about historic indictments.
All I know that when Sean Hannity asked if he's planning to run for president, it's a simple yes or no answer, what I think.
I can tell you right now, he's not running for president.